What's going on, YouTubers and watchers, viewers, and people of all walks? Welcome to this little chat. I wanted to make this one about how mental health awareness is brought forth in video games. The reason for this correlation, I guess, I love video games, being, I grew up on them. And now my kids are growing up on them, probably a little more than I would like, seeing my past mistakes, but it is what it is, and we do what we can. Mental health is also a big thing in my life. I did a previous video for Let's Talk Day, Mental Health Awareness Day. It was last week, and you can go check it out. I'll put the link in the description. And now, the thing about mental health in video games, it's not always accurate in how it's portrayed, but I'm sure they do their best. These game makers don't just take some kind of rumors or their own personal ideas or uneducated opinions or anything like that and just throw it in a game just because, hey, it looks or sounds cool. They'll have their own take on it, usually. There are a few that I'll touch on at the end of the game that I think were, I'd say, probably the best mention from what I've seen or experienced, but we'll get to that. We've got to start with a little bit of theory, I guess, some background. You've got to know where we're coming from when it comes to mental health awareness. Let's start with this article that I found from December 27th, 2017. It was outlining that the World Health Organization was considering gaming disorders a mental health condition as of 2018. Now, this is characterized by impaired control and escalation of their behaviors despite knowing and encountering negative consequences. Now, the definition of disorder is persistent or recurrent behavior pattern of sufficient severity to result in significant impairment in personal, family, social, educational, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. So, you think people are gaming too much and it's ruining their lives. It's hurting relationships with their family and friends. They're showing up late to work or not doing their job too well or even losing jobs. It could be a sign that they might be playing too much. Then you think, well, what about these pro gamers, these guys that do it for a life? Well, that is their life. It can't really hurt their personal life if that's exactly what it is. Like their entire personal life revolves around going to these tournaments and making the big paychecks from, getting carpal tunnel. Now, the inclusion of mental or of gaming disorders in the WHO's, they call it the International Classification of Diseases. The purpose for this is to allow medical professionals to be able to make a diagnosis and therefore have research to look for treatments and other ways to find a solution for the gaming disorder, because before that it was just being treated as any other addiction, whether it was drugs or alcohol or gambling, whatever other addictions people may suffer out there. So it's not always the same. Every addiction is different dependencies, different symptoms, and different different causes. So then you look at other medical systems, I guess. America, the United States is a prime example, or anywhere else they have like privatized healthcare, two-tier, where you could pay for more immediate or better treatment. Then having this proper diagnosis allows for reimbursement through insurance programs or work benefit programs, if you get the benefits coverage through your employer. This article I read also had an interview with a Dr. Chris Ferguson, professor of psychiatry at Stetson University in Florida. And he's been researching games and media violence and their effects on the human mind and behaviors since 1997. And he's saying that the WHO, with their classification of diseases, doesn't always agree with the one that a lot of the industry professionals in the United States follow, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Now, the difference between them is that this one, from the American Psychiatric Association, focuses on mental conditions only, mental diseases, disorders, and whatnot, whereas the WHO focuses on both physical and mental, so, conditions of the body and the mind. It's not taking anything away from either of them, it's just that they do differ in that respect. And perhaps the DSM may be more specialized to recognizing addiction and disorders of the mind because that is all they deal with. They're also very centralized or localized, being focused mainly in the United States, but their learnings do get out to the rest of the world, whereas the WHO is looking all over the world at all the same time. Thing is, the DSM proposes that internet gaming should be a separate category of disorder. So that would actually open very specific doors to research internet gaming on its own, as opposed to just lumping it in with other gaming such as gambling or single player gaming, or even people that have addictions to the trading card games like Pokemon or Magic. Now, with all that said, what are the criteria to be classified as having this gaming disorder or addiction? Well, I didn't find anything on specific criteria in terms of numbers. It's definitely out there. I'm not one to really do a huge amount of research, and my eyes kind of fog over if I'm reading too much. But one thing I did find is that according to the American Psychological Association, only about 1% of gamers, competitive or recreational or otherwise, anybody feels that they may fall into these categories of disorder or addiction, only 1% or less actually do. So it's just something to chew on when you're thinking about if you play too much, or if your kids play too much, or your parents. Who knows, right? My parents play. My dad's addicted to euchre online. So think what you will of those type of card games, but it's still online gaming, right? I'm going to jump in now to the games that I feel capture mental health awareness better than most. One that I've heard about and I've never really experienced more than seeing a trailer for it, or I think it was just a release trailer, wasn't even a gameplay trailer, was a game called We Happy Few. From the synopsis I read on Steam, what I'm gathering from the trailer, it's one of these games where I believe it was set in 1600s London, but like an alternate 1600s London, so almost steampunky, it was 1600s, but they had some almost modern technology. But this is a society where everything seems normal on the surface, but everybody is medicated to conformity, essentially. Everybody's taking the same happy pill and they're all behaving the same. And now you're playing a character who kind of sees the light. I don't know if you've seen the movie Equilibrium, But it's kind of like that, where as long as you're on this drug, you're the same as everybody else. Everybody's happy. There's no crime, you know, like babies don't cry, that kind of deal. So you could be medicated and happy, or you can skip your meds, keep your sanity, but now everybody's out to get you, and you see the world for what it really is. So instead of having this beautiful feast with a nice roast pig and 8 types of potatoes and, you know, whatever you want, and all your family smiling around the table, you know, you're looking at it and it's like rats and entrails, but everybody's still smiling and taking mouthfuls without a second thought. So, you know, choices. Take the pill. Which pill do you want? The blue pill, red pill, right? Matrix reference. Second game that I'll mention is one that I tend to start over and over and over because it's not one of those games where I can save and come back to later. But that's just me. I've seen people that come back to it and, you know, it's a day by day thing. So, you know, they've got hundreds of days into it. But it's called Don't Starve. I played it when it was a single player component. Now it's got a bunch of expansions and a multiplayer component to it called Don't Starve Together. You wake up stranded and alone in this foreign land, and you're greeted by some mysterious character, and he doesn't really give you a sense of direction. You start with nothing but the clothes on your back. There's some characters that start with maybe one item, like a girl that has a lighter, another girl has a flower from her dead sister. Now what Don't Starve does to capture the mental health awareness aspect is that to keep your character healthy and well and to survive in this game, you have to watch over 3 components. You got your hunger, you've got your temperature, so you don't get too hot, too cold, and then there's another one where you have to watch your sanity. Now, this can be affected by several factors. You know, you craft a new item, you feel good, your sanity goes up. Wearing certain clothing items or armors will make your sanity go up. You know, you're feeling better about yourself. But there's other actions that will have a negative impact on it, such as digging a grave or spending too long in the rain or in a cave. You know, it'll have a negative effect on your sanity. Now, when your sanity gets too low, you start to visualize creatures off in the distance. At first it starts with faint shadows and they just swirl around and dissipate when you get too close. But as your sanity gets lower, they're a little more solid, they stick around when you're getting closer, and it takes them longer to dissipate or they'll just run away. Critters in the world will take on almost a nightmarish form, right? Like this, what looks like a rabbit with antenna normally becomes like this black, fluffy, it's like the rabbit became covered in oil and grew spikes, you know? And then when you get too low on your sanity, like almost empty on your sanity, these visions can actually manifest into creatures that will hurt you. You know, they'll actually chase after you, cause you harm. And this was interesting to me because it's very close to something real where, you know, there are people that suffer from a condition where they see things that aren't there, or they hear the sounds, voices and stuff that aren't there. And this can lead to harm in one way or another, whether it leads them into a harmful situation or it causes them to harm themselves. Now, this is something I'd like to touch on in a future video. I just really don't want to take this one on too long. You know, it's a separate topic. I'm not shying away from it by any means, but I'd like to look into some more literature about that aspect. So, don't starve. Your actions affect your sanity can affect your actions. And that's the way this one is. It's cute. I love the art style. It's definitely worth checking out. And it's available, I believe, on most of the gaming platforms that you can name. Now, the final one I want to touch on is probably the AAA title, even if it's not classed as such by the quote-unquote experts, and that's called Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice. You're a Pictish woman in the dawn of the Viking Age. Viking raids killed your beloved, and she's on a quest to the the Vikings' underworld of hell to claim the soul of her beloved back from the goddess of the underworld, Hela. You know, might recognize the name from Thor Ragnarok. You know, it's actually part of Viking lore. So this one was amazing, just an amazing experience for me. You got to watch play through the game and see how amazing it is, and then they've got a little thing from the main menu. It's like a behind the scenes, a making of the game, and you'll see why you have to play the game with headphones, because you'll notice in the making of video that they set up a binaural recording system for these voices that are going through Senua's head. And Senua's your main character, so those voices are going through her head throughout the entire game, and they're all over the place. You know, the binaural microphone, if you're not familiar, they have the microphone stand in the center of the room, right? So the microphone stand kind of right here, but then they've got the microphones on either side of it, and the voice actors would travel all around this microphone stand while speaking their lines, different pitches, different tones. So when you're playing the game, you can get into a hairy situation and you'll have the one voice that's right beside your head and they're screaming at you, do this, do this, do this. But then you got the whispers kind of back in the distance off over here, and they're telling you, you might not want to do that. And who do you listen to? Right? What it comes down to is it's pretty linear. You know, you play the game. If you don't do a certain action, you're not moving on, regardless of what the voices say. But it is very interesting. And at the opening of the game, you're being told the story by the primary aspect in Senua's head as she's rowing through the water towards the land that'll take her towards hell. And when the opening credits first come in, the first name you see is that of the mental health advisor. It's a psychiatric professor at, I can't remember the name of the university now, but it's in England, and they conferred with him, and he's the first credit in this thing. They conferred with him, they had a historic advisor, and then one thing that may or may not be credited, I can't remember right now, is that they did have several conferences throughout the making of the game with people suffering from paranoia and schizophrenia and psychosis, and they wanted to ask them if this was similar to experiences that they have or have had in the past. And at the end of the project, when the game was in the final drafts, they were very happy with the product. Everybody involved was happy with it, and they said this is about as close as you can get without actually having the condition yourself. So play it. It's just amazing. You know, just the ride through Senua's head as well as her entire journey. And then I'm not going to spoil the ending for you, but there is a bit of a twist ending. So another thing that stood out to me is that when Senua has something to say, when she is the one taking control of her mind, she will very pointedly stare directly at the camera, lock eyes with you. But any other time, if you try to pan the camera around to look in her face, just as you're getting in front of her face, she'll look away. And it's just subtle little things like that that I found were amazing. So those are 3 games that I liked. Hope I started with a little information that can help you. I'll get some links edited and posted down below. If you haven't already, then I'd appreciate if you leave a thumbs up on the way out and have the conversation with your loved one. And you know, as I said in my last video, let's look out for each other out there and have the conversations. And if you need help, seek help. If you want to chat, just, comment below and we'll chat. See you later, folks.